Hey everybody, Tony here. I'm at the DC Blockchain Summit and I have Commissioner Hester Peirce with me. Commissioner Peirce, how are you doing?
Tony, it's great to be here, and it's been a fun conference so far. Of course, I want to say that my views are my own views and not as a commissioner, not necessarily those of the SEC or my fellow commissioners.
Well, it's a pleasure to see you in person after we've spoken over Zoom, and I'm a big fan of yours and I appreciate all the work you've been doing. Commissioner Peirce, things are really heating up here in DC around crypto. I mean, Donald Trump last week said he's endorsing crypto. You have a couple of bills that are in play. The SAB 121 was repealed in the House. How are you feeling about crypto in general as it relates to it being in almost all facets of government?
Yeah, there has been a lot of attention in recent weeks and months on crypto, and I do. It's helpful to see Congress weighing in on some of these issues.
Sure.
You know, I've had concerns around SAB 121, for example, and it's helpful to see that people take those process considerations seriously.
Hester, I'm always curious as to the inner workings of things. So with SAB 121 being repealed in the House, how are you and the other folks at the SEC feeling about that as an agency?
Well, I mean, I've been feeling bad about SAB 121 since it was adopted. Adopted is the wrong word, since it was put out on our website, right? It's a staff accounting bulletin, as its name suggests, and so it's not a commission document. And when it first came out, I said, I think this is something we need to get notice and comment on. I need to understand how this is going to work.
Sure.
Since it came out, we've heard lots about the fact that it doesn't work.
Sure.
And it keeps people out of the industry who would otherwise come into it. So from my perspective, seeing other people share those concerns is really helpful. But we could, you know, SAB 121 is still up on our website. So I guess that's the answer to your question, right?
Maybe you could take me behind the scenes, the logic behind this, because it seems unreasonable that banks can hold the dollar amount of those crypto assets while, you know, outside the country, then, you know, other banks, global competitors don't have to do that. What's the logic, especially with a regulated entity like a bank?
Tony, I can't tell you the logic because I don't understand it. So that's the problem.
Okay. Got it.
And it keeps growing, right? It covers broker dealers. It was about public companies at first, and now it's broader. So it's broker dealers too. So right. I really don't understand the logic.
Now let's talk about the Bitcoin ETF. Amazing performance, but it was a fight to get that approved. And of course, it played out in the courts. I would love to get your thoughts on the judges calling the SEC arbitrary and capricious, and eventually the SEC being forced to approve those ETFs. And what are your thoughts on that whole process and how it played out in the courts?
Well, as you know, I would have preferred to see us moving forward earlier. I had thought that we could have approved it earlier with the applicants that had come in. Again, each application has to be judged on its facts and circumstances, but right. I had written dissent saying we should have done this earlier. I mean, the fact that it took a court to weigh in is unfortunate, but the bottom line is the products did get out there, and that's what matters most. Now it's up to investors to decide whether they want them or not. And a lot of investors have decided they did. And again, we're not putting our imprimatur on any product, but this is all I wanted, is for people to be able to choose for themselves whether they wanted this product.
Absolutely. And I know there's decisions coming up with the Ethereum ETF. Are you able to say anything about that?
I'm not.
Okay. Now, there's some crypto regulation bills, a couple in the House, one for market structure, one for stablecoins. Senator Lummis and Gillibrand have a version in the Senate. There's a vote coming up for the one in the House pretty soon. What are your thoughts? Do you think that will help in saying, SEC, here's your job, CFTC, here's your job, and let's move forward?
Yeah, I think you're exactly putting your finger on what would be helpful to have Congress tell us, you know, whether they want us to be doing a particular piece of this or whether they want CFTC or potentially another regulator. And so we do answer to Congress. We're supposed to operate within the bounds that Congress sets for us. And so I'm always enthusiastic when I see Congress saying, "Hey, we want to give you some guidance on where to go." So that's helpful. Again,
Sure.
we'll see what happens, and I'm excited to see what this year brings.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I feel like we've crossed the chasm. Crypto is very much an election issue now. There's so many different politicians. Look, I know the game of politics. There's things that are said to pander to the industry, but at the same time, I mean, just even like last week, not that I'm supporting Donald Trump or Biden or one or the other, but the fact that a former president came out and said, I use this stuff, I endorse it. Do you feel that moving forward, it'll be easier for everybody to figure this out? In the past, it was hard because no one was, President Trump at one point was saying, I'm not a fan of this. I don't believe in it. I believe in the US dollar. But it seems something has changed. The narrative, we hit a tipping point. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I think what I'm most excited about is the possibility that we can actually get beyond the conversations about whether we're just going to say no to this whole industry and get to a place where we say, okay, what are we actually trying to achieve here?
Yeah. And
how can we do it in a way that maximizes people's liberty, but also enables people to get the kind of information they need, and for folks in the industry to feel there's a way to be compliant. And so if we've moved to that place, then I'm happy we're there.
For sure.
I still, I'm not always super optimistic because there's a lot going on that I'm not too happy about as well. But I think if we can move to that place, that's a good thing.
Well, Commissioner Peirce, the SEC absolutely has a job to do. There are bad actors. There are scammers looking to scam people. I've seen it, but there's great entrepreneurs and innovators building incredible things. There's companies adopting this technology. And if we could just have the clarity of the innovators and the entrepreneurs not worried about, they're going to get a Wells notice, they're going to get sued. And then you guys can focus, well, not you specifically, but, the SEC can focus on stopping the scammers. Because, I don't know, sometimes I get frustrated because I'm like, hey, this is scam happening. Why are you sending Coinbase a Wells notice?
So without speaking to any particular enforcement action, I think the point that you're making is such a good point, because I've talked to so many people who really want to use the technology to do something interesting, to try something interesting, and they're hanging back because they don't know whether it will implicate the securities laws, and if so, is there a way that they could do this that would make sense from a commercial standpoint, but also from a compliance standpoint.
Yeah.
And if we spent more time thinking about that, then we could concentrate our enforcement resources where they would make the most difference and help the most people. And that's what you're putting your finger on. And I think that's really important.
Final item here. I don't know much about your tenure as a commissioner, but if you were teed up to be the chair, would you accept that position, and are you able to?
I am very happy in my role as a commissioner. My term ends next June, and I've had a tremendous opportunity to work on really interesting issues. I think the most important thing, the thing that I worry about the most, is getting my institution, the SEC, into a more productive place, and that there's a lot of work still to be done. I'm hopeful that we can make some progress over the next year.
Well, you will have my vote and a lot of other folks' votes to stay and keep doing the great work. But if you don't stay the SEC, what do you think you might do after that?
Oh, this is a job where you can't think about your next job while you're in this one. So the only thing I have planned is to be my dad's assistant beekeeper. So other than that, I have no plans.
Hester, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Tony. Thank you.